about 3 weeks ago, March 28th, I was over in DC at a kickoff for Congress, and it was access to the ADs at. So basically with DeMar Hamlin had happened, most of us saw that on Monday Night Football, and basically this was a congressional attempt to get this bill passed at a federal level. So the event was on the 5th floor. And while we were going to the 5th floor, I happened to be on the elevator and I looked over and I saw Senator Blumenthal out of Massachusetts. And I remember, and I said, Senator Blumenthal, Marty McNair, I introduced myself and I said, you probably don't remember me, or you do remember me. I testified in 2020 in regards to the the Student Athletes Bill of Rights, where we talked about NIL. And he was like, I do remember you, and his staff remembered me and everything like that. And I said, Senator, let me give you my card, right? So I'm thinking the event I was going to was on the 5th floor. Senator Blumenthal got off on the 4th floor, and I jumped right off the elevator behind him. And I said, Senator, here, no, take my card, take my flyer. Because the interesting thing, when you're doing advocacy, it's not like I'm going to see this guy next week anywhere. It's not like I'm going to see him next week in the gym. So the point that I'm making is, look where we started at from when Dean Kohler and I, Brooke Learman, Shelley Heddleman, and all the other sponsors on this bill, where we were going at 2020, and we were walking through the halls of Annapolis trying to get this NIL bill passed. So Dean Kohler and I were basically walking around to the committees. I think we both missed the day when we were supposed to testify on a particular bill at that time. And at that time, the bill had a lot of ambiguity. So you really didn't know whether it was pretty much players get paid. We were really focusing on a notable provision of the health and wellness of student athlete safety. And basically the notable provision was just really an add-on to the bill. Now, Dean Cole and I are walking around talking to committee members. I would tell a personal story of our story and how we got here. And Dean Cole said something that really just knocked me out my seat. And she told one of the legislators or the committee members was, wait a minute, the NCAA can't tell a state what to do. A state can do whatever it is that they want to do. And I literally fell out my seat, because having a student athlete or a son that played in the NCAA Division I football, unfortunately he passed at that level. However, but I always thought the NCAA, for parents in the room, because I'm speaking to you all, I always thought the NCAA was this Oz type entity, right? And we already know, how many of us, show of hands, saw The Wiz? I'm just talking about The Wiz now, right? And how many of us have seen The Wizard of Oz? Show of hands. Got it. And we all know when they pulled the curtain back, what happened? Richard Pryor was in The Wiz. I can't remember who was in The Wizard of Oz. But you see my point, where in reality, everybody in since I'm using that analogy, everybody in that particular story had their own power. And everybody that we thought had the power, this one entity that we thought had the power, didn't have the power at all. So when Dean Kohler said, the NCAA can't tell a state what to do, I literally almost fell out my seat. Then when we started going on and we moved forward, and interesting thing, Brooke, interesting thing, we were at Coach Mike Loxley's house, University of Maryland coach. And I said I wasn't gonna share this, but it was a legislator there, and we all hanging out, smoking cigars, right? This kind of fellas thing, right? And one of the guys there, I can't remember what county he's in Maryland, but he said, man, you know them people played you. I'm like, what do you mean? Because at this time, I really didn't know a lot about legislation. I'm 54 years old, so all I know is, show of hands again, do you remember Schoolhouse Rock? I'm just a bill, show of hands, please, I'm not the only one. I'm just a bill, I'm only a bill, I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. That's all I knew about legislation. I know when Jordan passed, all I thought that the right thing would be to do is get one law in his name. That would be a great way to honor his legacy. I didn't think we'd be working on 4 successful laws. Amen. I didn't think that we would be testifying in front of Congress, right? And to create a baseline standard. I didn't think that we'd be in the state of Maryland where we had the perfect example of bipartisanship when it comes to passing the law, because when you get to the congressional level, they call this both sides of the aisle. Republicans on this side, Dems on this side. And then you got something in the middle called filibuster, right? Folks ain't agreeing, especially in 2021. It definitely after January 6th, that wasn't happening. So one of the things that we were when the bill did get passed the following year in 21, we were very adamant about the notable provision.